The metal chains around Hannah's wrists were cold and heavy. They had been there for so long that her skin was raw and bruised underneath. She stood on the raised platform in the center of the slave market and tried not to look at the crowd below. The aliens and even some humans stared at her like she was a piece of meat they might buy for dinner. The slave trader was a tall alien with purple skin and 4 arms. He held a long stick that he used to point at different parts of her body while he shouted to the crowd. His voice was loud and mean, and every word he said made Hannah feels smaller and more worthless. This female is from the Korean colony that we raided last month, the trader yelled. She is 25 years old and strong enough for heavy work, but listen carefully. Buyers, this one has a big problem. She cannot make babies. Her reproductive system is completely broken. She is useless for breeding. The crowd made disgusted sounds. Some aliens clicked their tongues, others shook their heads like they had tasted something bad. Hannah wanted to disappear. She wanted to sink through the floor and never be seen again, but the chains kept her standing upright on display for everyone to judge. A fat alien with tentacles for arms raised his hand. Maybe she can work in the crystal mines on Zarian 7. He called out, how long do defective females usually last in the deep tunnels? The trader grinned, showing his sharp yellow teeth. Usually about 6 months if they work hard and eat little, maybe 8 months if they are very lucky. But this one looks tough. She might last a full year if you feed her just enough to keep working. Hannah felt sick. The crystal mines were death sentences. Everyone knew that the air was poison and the work was so hard that even strong male slaves died quickly. But females who could not have babies were worth so little that mine work was all they were good for. Another alien bid 30 credits. The fat tentacle alien bid 35 more. Aliens joined in, but the bidding was slow and the amounts were tiny. Hannah had watched other Korean women from her colony sell for thousands of credits. The pretty ones went to wealthy families as servants. The ones who could have babies went to breeding farms, but Hannah was worth almost nothing. She remembered her life before the raid, her small house with the garden full of vegetables, the way her mother used to hum while cooking dinner, the man she had been engaged to marry before the doctors told her she could never have children. He had left her immediately, saying he needed a wife who could give him sons. Hannah had lived alone after that, growing her vegetables and trying to forget her loneliness now. Even that simple life was gone. The raiders had come in the night, burning everything and taking everyone they could catch as slaves. Hannah had hidden in her vegetable garden, but they found her anyway. They loaded her onto a ship with hundreds of other Koreans and flew them across space too. This terrible Marquette new voice cut through the crowd. I will take her. Everyone turned to look. The voice belonged to a human man. He was not tall, but he looked strong. His clothes were old and dirty, like he worked with his hands. His hair was brown and messy, and his face was covered with stubble like he had not shaved in days. The aliens in the crowd started laughing. A human, several of them said. Who let a human into the market? The slave trader looked annoyed, but he could not refuse a real bid. Sir, this female is defective. Are you sure you understand what you are buying? She cannot reproduce. She is only good for hard labor. The human man stepped closer to the platform. His eyes were brown and kind, but there was something strong in his face that made the alien stop laughing. I understand exactly what I am buying, he said quietly. How much? Only 40 credits so far, the trader said, but he sounded confused. Usually humans could not afford to buy slaves. They were considered a poor and weak species. I will pay 60 credits, the human said. The crowd went silent. 60 credits was more than anyone expected to pay for a broken female. The trader looked around to see if anyone would bid higher, but no one did. Sold to the human, the trader announced. He sounded disappointed that he could not create a bidding war. The human man walked up to the platform as the trader unlocked Hannah's chains. Her wrists were so sore that she almost cried when the metal came off. The human man did not grab her or pull her like she expected. Instead, he said, my name is Jake. Can you walk, or do you need help? Hannah stared at him. She had not expected kindness. I can walk, she whispered. Her voice was rough from not speaking for days. Jake nodded. Good. We have a long trip ahead of us. He did not put new chains on her. He did not even hold her arm. Instead, he just started walking toward the exit and waited for her to follow as they left the slave market. Hannah heard the other Koreans from her colony being sold behind them. She wanted to turn around and say goodbye, but she was afraid Jake would get angry if she stopped walking. So she kept her eyes forward and tried not to cry. The spaceport was busy and loud. Jake led her to a small old ship That looked like it had seen many years of hard use. "This is my transport," he said. "It is not fancy, but it will get us home safely home." Hannah thought, what kind of home was she going to? Jake had paid money for her, so she belonged to him now, but what did he want with a woman who could not have babies? What kind of work would he make her do? Jake helped her into the ship and showed her to a small room with a narrow bed. "There is food in the kitchen if you are hungry," he said. "We will reach haven in 3 days. You should rest." Hannah sat on the bed after Jake left and tried to understand what was happening. The bed was clean and soft, much better than the cold floor of the slave ship. The room even had a small window where she could see the stars outside. She had expected Jake to lock the door, but he did not. She had expected him to tell her the rules about what she could and could not do, but he did not. She had expected him to explain what work she would be doing, but he did not. Instead, he just left her alone to rest. For the first time in weeks, Hannah felt safe enough to really cry. She cried for her destroyed home. She cried for her lost family. She cried for the other Korean women still being sold at the market, and she cried because she did not know what would happen to her next. But deep inside her heart, there was a tiny spark of something she had almost forgotten: hope. Maybe this strange human man would be different. Maybe her life was not over. Maybe there was still a chance for something better. Outside her window, the stars looked peaceful and bright. Hannah wiped her tears and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she was safe, and that was more than she had dared to hope for in a very long time. 3 days later, Jake's ship landed on Haven, and Hannah got her first look at her new home. The planet was beautiful, with green rolling hills and a bright blue sky that reminded her of Earth. She had expected to see factories or mines or some other place where slaves worked hard until they died. Instead, she saw farmland stretching as far as her eyes could see. Jake led her down the ship's ramp and pointed to a small wooden house surrounded by vegetable gardens. "This is where we live," he said. "Simply is not much, but it is peaceful." Hannah stared at the house. It looked cozy and welcoming, with flowers growing around the front door. She had not seen anything so normal and happy in months. "Where are the other slaves?" she asked quietly. Jake looked confused. "Other slaves? There are no other slaves here, Hannah. It is just you and me, just the two of them." Hannah did not understand. If Jake had no other workers, then why did he buy her? What did he expect her to do? Jake showed her inside the house. It was small but clean, with handmade furniture and windows that let in lots of light. He took her to a bedroom that was bigger than the room on his ship. "This is your room," Jake said. "You can rest here tonight. Tomorrow I will show you around the farm, and we can figure out what kind of work you like best." Work you like best? The word sounded strange to Hannah. No one had ever asked her what she liked before. People just told her what to do and she did it, but Jake was waiting for an answer, so she nodded and said she would think about it. That night, Hannah lay in the comfortable bed and listened to the sounds outside her window. She could hear insects singing and a gentle wind blowing through trees. She had almost forgotten how peaceful quiet could be after months of hearing screaming and crying and the loud engines of slave ships. The silence felt like a gift. The next morning, Jake woke her up gently and gave her breakfast. It was simple food, but it was fresh and there was plenty of it. Jake ate with her at the kitchen table like they were equals, not like a master and his property. After breakfast, Jake showed her around the farm. He grew many different vegetables and had chickens for eggs and a few cows for milk. Everything was neat and well organized, but Hannah could see that Jake was working alone, and it was too much for one person. "Can you tell me about farming on your home planet?" Jake asked as they walked through rows of tomatoes. Hannah was surprised that he wanted to know about her old life. "Most people who bought slaves did not care about their past. My family grew vegetables," she said slowly. "We had good soil, and my grandmother taught me many old ways to help plants grow strong." Jake stopped walking and looked at her with interest. What kind of old ways? Hannah hesitated. She was not sure if Jake would think her grandmother's methods were silly or primitive, but he seemed genuinely curious, so she decided to tell him. "My grandmother said plants have feelings. Like people do. If you treat them with kindness and attention, they will grow better for you. She taught me to talk to them and listen to what they need instead of laughing." Jake nodded seriously. "That makes sense to me. Plants are living things just like we are. Would you like to try some of your grandmother's methods?" Here Hannah felt a spark of excitement. It had been so long since anyone had valued her knowledge. "Yes," she said, "I would like that very much." For the next few weeks, Hannah worked alongside Jake in the gardens, she showed him how to prepare soil using natural methods that her grandmother had taught her. She explained which plants grew well together and which ones needed to be kept apart. Most importantly, she showed him how to really pay attention to what the plants were telling them. The results were amazing. Under Hannah's care, the vegetables grew bigger and healthier than Jake had ever seen. The tomatoes were sweet and juicy. The lettuce was crisp and green. The carrots grew straight and long. Even Jake could see the difference. You have a real gift, Hannah, Jake said one evening as they sat on the porch after a long day of work. The garden has never looked better. Hannah felt proud for the first time in years. She had always been good with plants, but everyone had told her it did not matter because she could not have babies. Now Jake was telling her that her gift was valuable and important. As the days passed, Jake taught Hannah about the farm equipment and showed her how to care for the animals. Hannah taught Jake more traditional farming methods and helped him plan better crop rotations. They worked well together and the farm became more productive than it had ever been. One evening, Jake sat down beside Hannah on the porch. "Steps, there is something I need to tell you," he said. "You are not my slave, Hannah. You are free to leave any time you want. I bought you at the market to save you from the mines, not to own you." Hannah stared at him in shock. Free? She had not been free since the raiders came to her planet, but where would she go? Her home was destroyed, and her family was scattered across the galaxy as slaves. "I do not know where I would go," she said honestly. "You do not have to go anywhere," Jake said. "You can stay here as long as you want. This can be your home too if you like." Itome. The word felt strange in Hannah's mouth. She had thought she would never have a real home again, but this farm felt more like home than anywhere had in a long time. "I would like to stay," she said quietly. Jake smiled. "Good. I was hoping you would say that." That night, Hannah sat by her bedroom window looking out at the moonlit garden. She could see the plants swaying gently in the breeze, and she felt connected to them in a way she had almost forgotten. She was not just surviving anymore, she was living again. She was growing things and making them beautiful. She was useful and valued. The other human settlers who lived nearby came to visit. Sometimes they were kind people who treated Hannah like a friend, not like a former slave. They brought her seeds from their own gardens and asked her advice about their crops. They invited her to community gatherings and made her feel welcome. Slowly, Hannah began to heal from the terrible things that had happened to her. Jake never pushed her to talk about her past, but he was always ready to listen when she wanted to share. He never made her feel ashamed about being unable to have children. He valued her for who she was, not for what she could not do. For the first time since she was a young girl, Hannah felt like she had a purpose. She was helping to feed people with the food she grew. She was making the world a little more beautiful with her gardens. She was building a new life based on hope instead of fear. As she fell asleep that night, Hannah whispered a prayer of gratitude. She had been sold as worthless trash, but Jake had seen her real value. Now she was free and she was home. Months passed on Haven, and Hannah watched the seasons change from her bedroom window. The planet had a rhythm that felt peaceful and natural. Spring brought new growth in the gardens. Summer brought long, warm days perfect for working outside. Fall brought harvest time when all their hard work paid off. Winter brought rest and time to plan for the next year. During all these seasons, Hannah and Jake worked side by side. They planted seeds together and watched them grow. They fixed broken fences and repaired farm equipment. They cooked meals together and sat on the porch in the evenings talking about their day. Slowly, without either of them really noticing, their friendship deepened into something more. Jake never made Hannah feel like she owed him anything for saving her from the slave market. He treated her like an equal partner in everything they did. When alien visitors came to buy vegetables from their farm, Jake always introduced Hannah as his business partner, not as his worker. When neighbors asked about their relationship, Jake said Hannah was the most important person in his life. One day, a group of wealthy aliens came to the farm. They had heard about the amazing vegetables that Jake and Hannah grew and wanted to buy large quantities for their restaurants. The leader of the group was a tall alien with silver skin who looked down at Hannah with disgust. "Is this the broken female we heard about?" he asked Jake. "Why do you keep defective property instead of selling it to the mines where it belongs?" Jake stepped protectively in front of Hannah. His face became hard and angry. "Hannah is not property," he said in a voice that was quiet but dangerous. She is my partner and my friend. She grows the best vegetables on this planet. If you cannot treat her with respect, then you can buy your food somewhere else." The alien looked surprised. He was not used to humans standing up to him. But Jake did not back down. He waited until the alien apologized to Hannah before he would discuss any business. After the aliens left, Jake put his arm around Hannah's shoulders. "You never have to listen to people like that," he said. "You are worth more than all of them combined." That night, Hannah realized she was falling in love with Jake. He was kind and gentle, but also strong enough to protect her. He valued her mind and her skills. He made her feel beautiful even though other people called her broken. He had given her back her dignity and her hope. Jake seemed to be feeling the same way. He found excuses to work close to her in the garden. He brought her wildflowers from the hills around the farm. He sat closer to her on the porch in the evenings and sometimes held her hand while they watched the sunset. One evening, Jake asked Hannah to walk with him to the top of the hill behind their house. The view from there was beautiful, with the farmland spread out below and the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Hannah," Jake said, "I need to tell you something. I never expected to fall in love again after my first wife died, but you have brought joy back into my life. I know you have been hurt, and I do not want to push you into anything, but I love you." Hannah felt tears come to her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you too, Jake," she whispered. "I never thought anyone could love me after being told I was worthless for so long." Jake took her hands in his. "You are not worthless. You are precious and wonderful, and I feel lucky every day that I found you." They were married 6 months. Later, in a simple ceremony in their garden, the whole community of Haven came to celebrate. Korean refugees from other planets traveled long distances to be there. It was a symbol of hope that even after losing everything, it was possible to find love and build a new family. Hannah's wedding dress was simple but beautiful. She had sewn it herself using fabric that Jake bought for her in town. She wore flowers from their garden in her hair and carried a bouquet of vegetables from their farm because that was where their love had grown. After the wedding, Jake and Hannah built a bigger house together. They designed it with large windows that looked out over the gardens and a big kitchen where they could cook together. They planted fruit trees around the house and created flower beds that bloomed in different seasons. The farm continued to prosper under their joint care. They became known throughout the region for growing the best produce. Other farmers came to learn from Hannah's traditional methods. They started teaching classes about sustainable agriculture, and their techniques spread to farms across Haven. But even though Hannah was happy, she still felt sad about one thing. She saw how Jake smiled when neighbors brought their babies to visit. She watched him play with the children who came to the farm with their parents. He was so gentle and patient with them, and she knew he would make a wonderful father. Hannah felt guilty that she could never give Jake children of his own. She knew he said their love was enough, but she could see the longing in his eyes when he held other people's babies. Late at night, she would sometimes cry quietly, thinking about her failure as a woman. Jake always seemed to know when she was feeling sad about this. He would hold her and remind her of all the ways she was perfect. He would list all the things he loved about her: her kindness, her intelligence, her beautiful gardens, her gentle spirit, her strength in surviving terrible things. "You are everything I need," Jake would tell her. Family is not just about having babies. It is about love and commitment and building a life together. "We have all of that," but Hannah still wished she could give him more. She prayed to her ancestors, asking them to help her find a way to make Jake truly happy. She did not know that the universe was already preparing to answer her prayers in a way she could never have imagined. One night, as they lay in bed looking out at the stars, Hannah made a silent promise she would find a way to give Jake the family he deserved. Even if she did not know how, she would not let her broken body keep them from having children. Somehow, the stars seemed to twinkle brighter that night, as if they were listening to her prayer. 2 years after their wedding, Jake was working in the backfield when his plow hit something hard underground. He thought it was just a rock, but when he dug it up, he found something strange. It was a smooth metallic object about the size of a large watermelon. It was warm to the touch and hummed with some kind of energy. Jake called for Hannah to come see what he had found. She hurried across the field and knelt down beside the mysterious object. As soon as she touched it, she felt something unusual, like a gentle vibration that seemed to speak to her heart. "There might be more," Jake said. "We should dig around this area." They spent the rest of the day carefully digging and found a second identical object buried nearby. Both objects were connected to some kind of underground chamber that looked very old. The chamber was filled with strange equipment that neither Jake nor Hannah recognized. That night, they carried the objects to their house and examined them more closely under the kitchen lights. They could see that each object was transparent in some places. They peered through the clear sections and gasped at what they saw inside. Each object was a small form floating in glowing liquid. The forms looked like babies, but they were clearly not entirely human. They had the basic shape of human infants, but their ears were slightly pointed, and their skin had a faint shimmer like starlight. Jake and Hannah stared at the objects in amazement and fear. "What are they?" Hannah whispered. "I think they are some kind of stasis pods," Jake said. "They are keeping these babies alive, but I do not know how or why someone put them in our field." Over the next few days, Jake and Hannah researched everything they could find about the objects. Jake contacted other human settlements and asked if anyone had seen anything similar. Hannah studied the pods themselves, trying to understand how they worked. What they learned was disturbing. The pods were failing. The energy source that had kept them running for years was finally dying. The readings that Jake could get from his equipment showed that the babies inside would die within days if nothing was done, but the technology was far beyond anything humans understood. The pods were clearly made by an advanced alien species using science that Jake and Hannah could not comprehend. They had no way to repair them or keep them running. Hannah spent hours sitting beside the pods with her hands pressed against their warm surfaces. She found that when she touched them, the humming sound became stronger, and the babies inside seemed to move more actively. It was like they could sense her presence. Jake was worried that the failing pods might be dangerous. He wanted to contact the authorities and let scientists deal with them, but Hannah felt a deep connection to the babies inside. She could not explain it, but she knew they needed her help. "These children were abandoned, Jake," she said one night as they sat looking at the pods. "Someone left them here and never came back. They have been alone for years, just waiting for someone to find them. We cannot abandon them too." "But Hannah, we do not know anything about caring for alien babies," Jake said. "What if we cannot keep them alive? What if we make things worse?" Hannah touched the pods again and felt the gentle vibration. "I have always been good with growing things," she said quietly. "Maybe I can help them grow too." Against Jake's worried protests, Hannah began spending all her time with the pods. She sat beside them for hours, talking to them softly in Korean and English. She sang lullabies that her mother had sung to her. She told them stories about the farm and the beautiful planet they would see when they were born. Somehow, her presence made a difference. Pod's energy reading stabilized. Instead of continuing to decline, the babies inside became more active and seemed to be developing faster. Jake could not understand how Hannah's touch was helping, but he could not argue with the results. As weeks passed, the babies grew rapidly. They were going to be born soon, but Jake and Hannah had no idea how to help them or what they would need after birth. Jake read everything he could find about different alien species, trying to figure out what kind of children they were about to receive. Late one night, Hannah was sitting with the pods when she felt something change. The humming became louder and the glow inside became brighter. "Jake," she called. "I think it is time." Jake rushed to the kitchen and saw that both pods were opening. Panels slid back to reveal the babies inside, still floating in their protective liquid, but now breathing air for the first time. The liquid began to drain away, and the babies started to cry. Jake and Hannah carefully lifted the babies from their pods. The infants were perfect and beautiful, with soft skin and tiny fingers that grasped at the air. They looked mostly human, but their pointed ears and shimmering eyes showed their alien heritage. The first baby was a boy with dark hair like Hannah's. The second was a girl with lighter hair like Jake's. Both babies seemed healthy and strong despite their unusual origins. They stopped crying as soon as Hannah and Jake held them close. "We need to give them names," Hannah said as she cradled the baby girl. "The boy will be Minho," Jake said, "and the girl will be Gina." Hannah smiled through her tears. "They are ours now, Jake. No matter where they came from or who their original parents were, they belong to us." Jake nodded as he looked down at baby Minho sleeping peacefully in his arms. "Yes, they are ours. We will love them and protect them and give them the best life we can." That night, as the new family slept together, Jake and Hannah knew their lives had changed forever. They had found their children. in the most unexpected way, but love was already growing in their hearts. The babies who had been abandoned and forgotten were now the center of a family that would never let them go outside their window. The stars seemed to shine more brightly as if the universe itself was celebrating the birth of something special. Minho and Gina grew faster than normal human babies. Within 6 months they were crawling and trying to walk. Within a year they were running around the farm and speaking in full sentences. Jake and Hannah were amazed by how quickly their children learned everything, but they were also careful not to let anyone outside the community know how special the twins were. The children had abilities that no human child possessed. Minho could touch dying plants and make them healthy again. He would place his small hands on wilted flowers and watch them bloom brighter than before. Gina could look at broken farm equipment and somehow understand exactly what was wrong with it. She would point to the problem, and Jake would find that she was always right. But despite their unusual gifts, Minho and Gina were loving and gentle children. They played with the neighborhood kids and shared their toys. They helped with chores around the farm and never complained about working hard. They called Jake Papa and Hannah Mama and ran to them whenever they were scared or hurt. The community of Haven embraced the twins completely. The neighbors who had watched Jake and Hannah build their love story were thrilled to see them become parents. No one asked difficult questions about where the children had come from or why they looked slightly different. Everyone could see how much Jake and Hannah loved their son and daughter. Old Mrs. Chun, who lived on the next farm over, brought homemade cookies every week. Young Mr. Park, who ran the equipment repair shop, taught Minho how to fix simple machines. Farmer Lee and his wife invited the whole family for dinner every Sunday. The twins grew up surrounded by love and acceptance, but their unusual abilities began to attract attention from beyond Haven. Travelers who stopped at the farm noticed that the vegetables grew unusually large and healthy. They saw Gina help her father repair complicated machinery. With just a glance, some of these visitors were not as kind as the local community. One day, a group of official-looking aliens arrived at the farm. They claimed to be conducting a survey of human agricultural methods, but they spent most of their time watching Minho and Gina play. The twins stayed close to their parents, sensing that these strangers were different from their usual friendly visitors. After the aliens left, Jake found hidden recording devices around their property. Someone was spying on their family. The next week, different strangers came asking questions about unusual children in the area. Jake and Hannah realized they were in danger. We need help, Jake said that night after the children were asleep. These people are not going to leave us alone. Hannah agreed, but she was not sure who they could trust. The twins were so special that many people would want to take them away for study or worse. Jake contacted other human settlements explaining their situation without giving too many details about the children's abilities. The response surprised them. Human communities across the galaxy had been watching the situation on Haven with interest. They knew that Jake and Hannah had found something precious, and they were ready to help protect it. Humans had been pushed around by more powerful alien species for too long. They were tired of being treated as inferior. Within days, human ships began arriving at Haven. Some were traders who changed their routes to pass through the system. Others were military personnel on leave who happened to visit. Some were just ordinary families who decided to take vacations on the peaceful farming planet. All of these visitors had one thing in common. They were there to make sure that no one bothered the family on the hill who grew the most beautiful vegetables in the sector. The message was clear. Without being spoken, anyone who wanted to harm Jake, Hannah, Minho, and Gina would have to deal with a lot of very determined humans. First, the twins continued to thrive despite the increased attention. Minho learned to control his plant healing abilities better. He could now help entire fields of crops grow strong and healthy. His touch could cure plant diseases that normally destroyed whole harvests. The farmers of Haven had never seen such abundant crops. Gina developed her mechanical intuition further. She could look at any machine and understand not just what was broken, but how to make it work better. She helped the community upgrade their farming equipment and improve their energy systems. Her suggestions always worked perfectly, even when experienced engineers could not understand her reasoning. Jake and Hannah watched their children with wonder every day. They had been told that Hannah was worthless because she could not bear children. But now they were raising two of the most gifted children in the galaxy. The twins use their abilities to help others. Just like their parents had taught them, the children never acted like they were better than anyone else, despite their amazing gifts. They were humble and kind. They played with regular human children and treated everyone as equals. They shared their abilities freely to help their community prosper. Hannah often sat in her garden in the evenings, watching Minho help the plants grow while Gina fixed broken tools. She remembered the day she had been sold at the slave market, feeling worthless and ashamed. Now she was the mother of miracles. Her children called her Mama and came to her with their joys and their problems. She was complete in a way she had never dreamed possible. Jake would join her on these quiet evenings, putting his arm around her shoulders as they watched their children play. He had bought her to save her from the mines, never imagining that she would save him too. She had brought love and purpose into his life, and now they had built something beautiful together. The network of humans protecting their family grew stronger every day. Ships arrived regularly, bringing supplies and support. The message spread across human space that Haven was under protection. Anyone who threatened the farming families there would face consequences from humans everywhere. As the twins' third birthday approached, Jake and Hannah felt both proud and worried. Their children were growing into remarkable young people, but the attention from outsiders was also growing. They knew that bigger challenges were coming, but they also knew they were not facing them alone. The woman who had been sold as trash had become the heart of a family that was inspiring humans across the galaxy to stand together. Her children were proof that love could create miracles, and that the most precious things were often found in the most unexpected places. When Minho and Gina turned 5 years old, the peaceful life on Haven was shattered by the arrival of a massive alien war fleet. The ships filled the sky like dark clouds, blocking out the sun. Their hulls bore the symbols of the Favax Empire, the same species that had enslaved Hannah years ago at that terrible market. Jake stood on his front porch holding Hannah's hand while their children pressed close against their legs. The lead ship was so large it cast a shadow over their entire farm. Its weapons were pointed down at the planet, ready to destroy everything they had built. A voice boomed from speakers on the ship, amplified so loud that everyone on Haven could hear it clearly. "This is Commander Vex of the Kravax Imperial Fleet. We have come for the hybrid children that are being illegally harbored on this primitive world." Jake activated his communication system and broadcast back to the fleet. "These are our children, Commander. They were abandoned and dying when we found them. We saved their lives and raised them with love. They belong with their family." The alien commander's laughter was cold and cruel. "Humans cannot properly care for advanced hybrid beings. These children possess abilities that could be dangerous if not controlled properly. You will surrender them immediately, or we will take them by force." Hannah stepped forward and spoke into the communicator, her voice shaking with anger, but also with fierce determination. "You sold me as worthless trash because I could not bear children. Now I am the mother of the most precious children in the galaxy. They are mine, and I will never let you have them more." Alien voices joined the conversation from other ships in the fleet. "The hybrids are too valuable to waste on emotional attachment," they said. "Scientific study of their abilities could benefit the entire galaxy," they said. "Humans are too primitive to understand what they possess," they said. But Jake had sent out emergency messages as soon as the fleet appeared, and now something beautiful began to happen. Ships started arriving from every direction. They were not military vessels with powerful weapons. They were ordinary human ships, farming transports, mining haulers, colony ships, family vessels filled with regular people who had come to help. Within hours, the alien war fleet was surrounded by thousands of human ships. The farmers who grew food for distant colonies, the miners who dug metals from asteroid belts, the families who had built new homes on frontier worlds, all of them had dropped everything they were doing to come to Haven. The alien commander sounded less confident when he spoke again. "This is a military matter," he announced. "Civilian vessels should withdraw immediately before they are fired upon." But the human ships did not withdraw. Instead, more kept arriving. Every few minutes, another group of vessels dropped out of hyperspace and joined the growing formation around Haven. The aliens found themselves outnumbered by people who had nothing but determination and love. Then something happened that no one expected. Minho and Gina, sensing the danger to their family and their home, did something they had never done before. They joined their minds together and sent a message that every person in both fleets could hear directly in their thoughts. The message was not in words but in pure emotion and memory. It showed the twins floating alone in their dying pods for years with no one to care for them. It showed Jake and Hannah finding them and choosing to save them despite the risks. It showed the love and kindness they had received from their human family and community. The psychic message revealed the truth about what family really meant. It was not about genetics or species or breeding potential. It was about choosing to love someone and protect them and help them grow into the best version of themselves. The twins showed everyone present how Jake and Hannah had given them exactly that kind of love. Even some of the alien crews in the Kravax fleet were moved by this display of pure family devotion. Several ships began breaking away from the formation, their captains refusing to participate in separating children from parents who clearly loved them. The human ships responded to the twins' message by broadcasting their own stories. Every ship had families aboard. Every family had chosen love over convenience at some point in their lives. The combined voices of thousands of humans filled the communication channels with testimonies about the power of chosen family. Commander Vex tried to maintain control of the situation. These are advanced hybrid beings, he insisted. They require specialized training and scientific oversight, but his own crews were no longer listening. Many of the aliens in his fleet had families of their own, and the twins' message had reminded them what really mattered. Some ships began withdrawing from the attack formation, others simply powered down their weapons. Jake held his children close as he watched the alien fleet beginning to break apart. "You see, Commander," he broadcast to Vex, "these children are not weapons or experiments. They are our son and daughter. They choose love over fear, and so do we." The decisive moment came when the twins sent one final message. This one was directed specifically at Commander Vex, and it contained a simple question. Why do you want to separate families? Do you remember being a child? Do you remember needing love? The communication channels fell silent for several minutes. Then Commander Vex's voice came through one last time, but it sounded different now, tired and maybe a little sad. "Perhaps we have underestimated your species after all," he said. The Kravax fleet began withdrawing from Haven. The ships that had come to take the children away disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind only the thousands of human vessels that had come to protect one family. The sky cleared and the sun shone down on the farm again as the human ships began departing. Their crews sent messages of congratulations and support to Jake and Hannah. The farmers promised to trade with Haven. The miners offered to help improve the planet's infrastructure. The families invited the twins to visit their worlds anytime. That evening, as the last of the protective fleet departed, Jake and Hannah sat on their porch watching Minho and Gina play in the garden. The children were laughing and chasing fireflies just like any normal kids, despite having just helped save themselves through incredible psychic abilities. Hannah looked out at her vegetable garden, where everything was growing strong and healthy under Minho's care. She thought about the slave market, where she had been sold as worthless trash. She thought about all the pain and hopelessness she had felt. Then she looked at her children and her husband and felt overwhelming gratitude. Jake put his arm around her and pulled her close. "We did it," he said quietly. "We kept our family together." Hannah smiled and whispered a Korean blessing over her children as they played. They were safe, they were loved, they were home. And every human in the galaxy now knew that when it came to protecting family, there was no force in the universe stronger than love. The stars came out one by one as night fell over Haven. Each light in the sky represented hope for the future. The woman who could not bear children had raised the most important children in the galaxy, and her love had inspired an entire species to stand up for what was right. The galaxy would never be the same.